Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to another turkey pattern test. And this heat is really getting ridiculous out here. If you've seen the last few videos, you know how hot it is, but my shirt feels like I jumped into a hot tub. But either way, I've still got some interesting testing to do, so we're out here braving it anyway. But for today's video, I brought back out some more of these, and I'll take one out of the package so you can see. But these are a Salt Creek Custom 2-ounce load of lead number 6s, and we've tested these in a couple other videos now, and they've shown some really intriguing results, especially for a lead number 6 load like this. So I'm really curious to see what today's setup is going to bring out of them. And as for that setup, I brought back out my Remington 1187 Premier. However, I threw in this choke. This is a TRUGLO Gobble-Stopper Xtreme 665 constriction choke. And for a budget choke, I think this was like 25 bucks. It has shown us some really impressive results so far for what it is. So I'm really excited to see what this will do with those Salt Creek 6s like that. Now, those Salt Creek 6s did perform pretty well out of another 665, the ABNX Crusher. I'll leave the card above for that if you want to go check that out. So I have some good hopes for what this might be able to perform like today. So as per usual, I've got a turkey target over here at 40 yards. I do also have the chronograph, so our shot will be across there. So that way we will be able to see our speed. So let's head over here, get you guys set up on the target. We'll shoot our shot. We'll take a look at our chronograph number, and then we'll go see how they perform. So let's head over here and shoot them and see what they can do. Okay, so that shot gave us 1,207 feet per second across the chronograph. That's pretty much exactly what we've been seeing between 1,200 and 1,230-ish for a lot of these Salt Creek shells like that. So definitely nothing out of the ordinary. However, I do think we had some interesting things happen down on our target. So let's go check it out and see what we can discover on that. Alright, so now we're down here at 40 yards, and this is our target. Now, this is definitely pretty interesting, and I'll show you the other reason as to why here in a minute. But let's take a look at this and see what we got out of it. We definitely have a dead bird. There's 2 in the spine right there, and maybe a half of another one a little bit lower. But our core area is to the left over here. Now, if we just look at the core, it's a pretty good looking core. It's not super tight, but it's definitely pretty condensed. So definitely not too bad looking there. But then, as you've probably already seen, if we back up and look, we have shot just about over the entire paper here. So overall, I do think our main pattern was a little left, obviously, since I'm not zeroed with that choke or that load. But this is pretty interesting. This is not something we've seen out of these Salt Creek shells so far. But this is why we test them in as many chokes as we can, and not just take a guess as to what's going to perform and not perform before we go out into the woods. But like we looked at earlier, we have our core that looks pretty good. But as we move around, the outside of this pattern is definitely blown wide open here. But I do not at all think that's a reason coming from the Salt Creek shells. We have seen good results with this shell before, and everything seems to be very consistent. So now that we've seen our pattern, which would kill a bird, but it's not ideal, let's take a look at some other aspects of this here, and I'm going to make a guess as to what happened with why we have a pattern like this out of the blue from these Salt Creek shells. Okay, so now we're looking at our wad here, and as you can clearly see, this wad is contorted all in some random shapes. The bottom here is just about ripped completely off of it. This is definitely a pretty rough looking wad. However, what I believe happened is that the porting on that TRUGLO choke is much larger than some of the other chokes we've tested these through. I think that this wad caught that porting and those holes a little bit more than what it was really designed to do, and just caught the wad and spun it all kinds of crazy as it was leaving the end of the barrel here, which is why we saw a somewhat okay core, but the rest of the pattern is just blown all over the place. Now that is obviously no fault at all of Salt Creek's. Their shell did what it was supposed to do, but I definitely do not think that these shells agree very much with those ported chokes, especially the ones that have the larger, like BB sized holes drilled through them like that TRUGLO does. So that brings up the question. I do have the Colonial 675 that is not ported at all. Do we run these through that and see if we notice a difference? It is a more open construction, but clearly this wad, I believe it caught the inside of that choke, and that's what threw our pattern off like that. So no fault of Salt Creek's, but I would be cautious and definitely test it ahead of time if you have a choke with large porting spots on it like that TRUGLO choke has. All right, well, what did you guys think about that? Do you think that my theory is close to being right with what happened there? We saw a good start to a good core there. And from the previous tests we've done, these Salt Creek lead 6s do shoot very well for a lead load. But we saw that outside edge of that pattern blow wide open, which we have not seen from these Salt Creek shells yet. So I definitely think if you want to use some of these shells, be cautious about porting, especially large porting on your chokes. But like I said a second ago, that brings the question. Should we run these through that Colonial I have that has no porting? Or maybe the old Remington straight rifle choke that has no porting in it. And maybe we see some little bit different results. But either way, let me know what you think about this. And is that something that you expected to see, or did this kind of surprise you? I know it kind of surprised me a little bit, but looking at it afterwards, I can definitely see the potential as to why this happened. But I do have to say thank you to Keith and the guys over at Salt Creek for sending me these shells. They definitely make a good shell, and don't let this test fool you on them. They're definitely a much better shell than what we saw today. That choke just does not go very well with these shells. But I'm going to get back to doing some testing, so stay tuned because we've got plenty more shotgun and rifle tests and some hunting stuff and all that coming real soon. So on that note, I'll see y'all in the next one.